real stories of werewolves of Dogman history from your emails, illustrated and animated with the democratizing magic of machine learning AI. Welcome to Scary Stories.
I saw Dogman fight the devil. Memories from Uncle Ellis's farm. Dear Scary Stories NYC. I'm going to write down some painful memories for you. This email is about the period of my life when I repeatedly saw the Dogman. Some nights when the wind whistles through the gaps in my bedroom window, I find myself transported back to those old days. Back when I was in my early 20s, where I learned that some shadows move with purpose, and where I discovered that not all monsters deserve our fear. It was the late summer of 1987 when I moved in with my Uncle Ellis. At 47, he wasn't truly elderly, but decades of hard farming had bent his frame and weathered his face into something ancient. After Aunt Meredith passed, he couldn't manage the place alone, and I needed somewhere to land after college didn't work out the way I'd planned. A mutually beneficial arrangement, we told ourselves. I'd help run the farm while figuring out my next life move, and he'd have company and an extra pair of hands. What neither of us bargained for was the strange plague that would soon afflict the property, or the creatures that would emerge from the darkness at the edge of the fields. These memories have haunted me for decades now, but perhaps in sharing them, I might finally lay them to rest. The first time I saw the Dogman was just 3 weeks after I'd arrived. I was walking the fence line at dusk, checking for breaks where the neighbors' dogs might slip through and harass Uncle Ellis's sheep. The September air had that particular quality, still warm, but with an underlying coolness that promised fall was coming. I remember pausing to watch the sunset blazing orange and pink across the western sky, when something moved at the tree line about 50 yards away. At first I thought it was a bear, which would have been unusual enough in that part of the state. But then, it stood upright. In the fading light, its silhouette was unmistakably that of a massive wolf standing on 2 legs. It must have been 7 or 8 feet tall, with broad shoulders tapering to a narrow waist, powerful arms ending in what looked like hands rather than paws, and legs built like those of a man but bent backward at the knee like a dog's hind legs. Its head was pure wolf, elongated snout, pointed ears atop its head, and even from that distance, I could see the amber glow of its eyes catching the last ray of sunlight. For what felt like minutes, but was probably only seconds, we stared at each other across the field. My blood turned to ice in my veins, every instinct screaming at me to run, while my feet remained rooted to the spot. The creature's chest expanded with a deep breath, and then it dropped to all fours and loped back into the woods, moving with a disturbing fluidity that was neither fully human nor fully animal. I tried to tell myself that what I'd seen was a regular wolf, or maybe a large coyote, and the fading light had played tricks on my eyes. But deep down I knew better. That night, I slept with my grandfather's old shotgun propped against the nightstand. Over the next few weeks, I spotted that same creature 3 more times, always at a distance, always at dawn or dusk, always disappearing before I could fully process what I was seeing. I began calling it the Dogman in my head, although I never mentioned it at first to Uncle Ellis. The last thing I wanted was for him to think I wasn't capable of handling the responsibilities that he'd entrusted to me. But then the troubles began. First it was a couple of the chickens found dead in their coop, throats torn out but bodies otherwise untouched, not eaten, which struck me as odd for a predator. Then, one of the milk cows developed a strange wasting illness, refusing to eat and producing bad milk before collapsing one morning. She was gone before the vets could arrive. Our wheat field developed a blight that spread with unnatural speed. The fruit trees dropped their harvest prematurely, the apples and pears rotting from the inside out. And all the while, those amber eyes watched from the shadows. The Dogman was stalking our farm, and in my mind, everything connected back to its appearance. I'd catch glimpses of it standing sentinel at the forest edge, its massive form unmistakable, against the backdrop of trees. Sometimes when the moon was full, I'd wake to a sound that wasn't quite howl and wasn't quite a scream, drifting through my open window. On those nights, the creature would be there, out there, standing upright in the middle of the south field, head thrown back as it called to something that I couldn't see or understand. What was it waiting for? Why did it watch us but never approach? And most troublingly, was it somehow responsible for the wave of misfortune, destroying everything Uncle Ellis had spent his life building? The farm's decline happened with shocking speed. By late October, we'd lost a third of the livestock to mysterious ailments that left the vet scratching his head. He told us he'd never seen anything like it, pocketing his payment while avoiding my eyes. Crops withered in the field, despite perfect growing conditions, and a sour smell hung in the air that no amount of rain seemed to wash away. My nights became sleepless vigils, watching from my window as the Dogman prowled the perimeter of our property. I had already convinced myself the creature was the source of our troubles, its arrival and our misfortune too perfectly aligned to be coincidence. The shotgun became my constant companion. One evening, after another calf was found dead, this one with strange markings carved into its hide, Uncle Ellis finally broke his silence on the matter. "It ain't what you think, boy," he said, his weathered hands trembling around his coffee mug. "The wolf thing ain't causing this. It's the other one." I hadn't told him I was seeing the wolf. Somehow he knew. But I didn't know what other one he was talking about. When I asked him, he just responded with 2 words. "The devil." I remember how the kitchen light cast deep shadows across his face as he leaned forward. My daddy saw it in 32 during the drought. My granddaddy fought it off in 1897. It comes when the land is vulnerable, when people are desperate. Now the Dogman is a wolf spirit, old as these hills, but that other thing, he trailed off, eyes distant with fear. That other thing, the devil, it just wears the shape of a goat. But what it really is, well, the Bible got that part right. I nodded along, my heart sinking. In my mind, my Uncle Ellis was losing his grip on reality, spinning folklore to explain away bad luck. Yet something in his steady gaze made the hair on my neck stand up. "Watch for the signs," he whispered. "Livestock dying without blood, crops rotting from within, and that smell, like sulfur mixed with spoiled milk." He grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. "The wolf ain't your enemy, boy. Remember that, when the time comes." November brought with it a suffocating dread that settled over the farm like morning fog. The well water took on a metallic taste. Birds abandoned our land entirely. No crows in the cornfield, no sparrows in the barn eaves. Even the rats went away. I found strange markings in the dirt near the livestock pens. Not footprints exactly, but perfect circles carved into the hardened soil, as if by something impossibly precise. Uncle Ellis would cross himself whenever he spotted one of those. The dreams started too. Each night, I'd see myself standing in the south field, watching 2 silhouettes locked in battle against a blood-red moon. One towering and wolf-like, the other smaller, but somehow even more terrifying. A shape I couldn't quite grasp in my dream, but one that filled me with instinctive revulsion. I stopped dismissing Uncle Ellis's ravings. Something was coming. The farm held its breath along with me, and the both of us just waited. In December, I woke up at 4:30 a.m. restless from another nightmare, and I decided to look on a pregnant heifer, due to calve any day. The pre-dawn air bit at my skin as I trudged across the frost-stiffened field, flashlight beams swinging through darkness thick as molasses. That is when I heard it. A soft, rhythmic clicking sound, like bone tapping against stone. I killed my flashlight, letting my eyes adjust to the darkness. The eastern horizon showed just the faintest line of gray, promising dawn but not delivering it yet. In that half-light, I saw the heifer at the far edge of the pasture, on her feet, but swaying unnaturally. And then, I saw the other creature. God help me, but there's no way to describe it that doesn't sound like insanity. It stood on two legs about 20 yards from the heifer. It looked like a goat, but it was wrong in every possible way. Its hind legs had elongated, jointed like a man's but backward at the knee, ending in split hooves that clicked against the frozen ground with each step. The proportions were all distorted. Too tall, too thin, the spine curved unnaturally beneath patchy white fur that seemed to absorb rather than reflect what little light existed. But it was the head that froze my blood. A goat's skull, yes, with curved horns sweeping back from its forehead, but the face was almost human in its expressions. The snout was shorter than a normal goat's, the jaw wider, giving it an unsettling smile. Where eyes should have been were twin pools of amber light, not reflecting light like the Dogman's eyes, but generating it, casting sickly yellow beams across the pasture. As I watched, paralyzed, it raised one front hoof. No, not a hoof exactly, but something between a cloven hoof and a hand, with two distinct digits that moved with horrible dexterity. It made a casual flicking motion toward the heifer, and the poor animal collapsed instantly, legs buckling as if every bone had suddenly dissolved. The goat thing's chest swelled with satisfaction. A sound emerged from its throat, not a bleat, but a low chuckle with the timbre of grinding stones. Then, it dropped forward onto all fours, the transformation from bipedal to quadruped happening with fluid, practiced ease. Its glowing eyes fixed on the fallen heifer as it began to approach its victim with deliberate, almost ceremonial slowness. In that moment, I understood what Uncle Ellis had been trying to tell me. This wasn't just some predator. This was something ancient and wrong, something that fed not just on flesh, but on suffering and decay. The rot spreading through our farm had been coincidence or bad luck. It had been preparation. It had been softening, ripening. I should have run back to the house for the shotgun. I should have called for help, but instead, my legs carried me forward without any conscious thought, anger overriding fear, as I rushed toward the fallen heifer with nothing but a flashlight and my pocket knife as weapons. I had only covered half the distance when the atmosphere shifted. A low growl rolled across the field like distant thunder, stopping me in my tracks. The goat thing froze too, its head snapping up, amber eyes scanning the tree line. From the small grove of oaks emerged a massive shadow that resolved itself into the familiar, yet still terrifying form of the Dogman. In the growing dawn light, I could see it clearly for the first time. It stood well over 7 feet tall, its powerful frame covered in thick dark fur that rippled over muscles bunched for action. Its legs were bent backward like a wolf's, but it stood upright, with the confidence of something that had evolved to do just that. Its hands, and they were hands despite the sharp claws extending from each finger, flexed at its sides. The Dogman's face was a perfect hybrid of wolf and man, the elongated snout housing teeth designed for tearing, the amber eyes now blazing with intelligence and fury, ears laid flat against its skull. When it opened its mouth, the sound that emerged was neither howl nor roar, but something primal that vibrated through the frozen ground beneath my feet. The goat thing rose once more to its hind legs, facing this new challenge. For a long moment they stood across from each other, like primordial enemies, neither advancing, both assessing. The poor heifer lay forgotten between them, steam still rising from her body in the cold air. And then, with shocking speed, the Dogman charged. It moved with the grace of a natural predator, covering the distance in powerful bounds. The goat thing did not retreat, but instead braced itself, horns lowered, those terrible digits extended. When they collided, the impact sent a visible shockwave through the mist surrounding them. What followed wasn't the bloody battle I was expecting. Instead, they engaged in an ancient dance of intimidation, circling, feinting, displaying. The Dogman's size clearly gave it advantage. It towered over the goat thing, teeth bared in a snarl that seemed to say this territory was claimed, this land protected. The goat thing hissed and spat, those horrible yellow eyes flaring brighter as it made jabbing motions with its horns. 3 times they came together in brief, violent clashes that sent them spinning apart again. No blood was drawn that I could see, but each time the goat thing seemed less certain, its movements becoming more defensive than offensive. Finally, the Dogman reared up to its full height, chest expanding as it released a howl that seemed to shake the very air around me. The sound pierced through my body, resonating with something ancient in my DNA that recognized the call of an apex predator claiming dominance. The goat thing's nerve broke. It spun and bounded away on all fours with unnatural speed, heading toward the western fence line. The Dogman dropped to all fours as well, its massive form surprisingly fast as it pursued, both creatures disappearing into the morning mist that still clung to the lower fields. I stood trembling, suddenly aware of the cold seeping through my boots and the first real rays of sunlight breaking over the horizon. Birds began to call tentatively from distant trees, as if testing whether the world was safe again. It was too late for the heifer, of course. When I finally reached her, her eyes were already glazing over, her body cooling rapidly, despite having been alive just minutes before. There was not a single mark on her, no wound, no sign of struggle. She had simply been unmade somehow, life extracted by that casual flick of the goat thing's appendage. As I knelt beside her, I noticed something that sent a fresh chill through me. The ground around her body was completely barren. No frost, no grass, just dead earth in a perfect circle, as if something had drawn every bit of life from the soil itself. You know, it's strange how life circles back on itself. After that frozen December dawn, I never saw either creature again. Within weeks, the farm began to heal. Crops strengthened. Animals regained their vigor. Even the well water tasted sweet once more. Uncle Ellis would sometimes pause at the edge of that oak grove, nodding respectfully, as if acknowledging an unseen guardian. Some battles have been being fought on this land since before people even walked on it, he told me once. Sometimes we're just witnesses. Years later, after Uncle Ellis passed and the farm became mine, I'd occasionally find large canine tracks circling the property line after particularly stormy nights. I never feared them, though. Some monsters, I learned, are actually sentinels, ancient protectors, keeping worse things at bay. I leave offerings sometimes for my sentinel at the edge of those woods, just in case.
This channel survives when people play their part. Tonight we thank our EP Nadia Reinhardt. Please join me in thanking channel member Nadia Reinhardt for making this episode possible. As a channel member who signed up at YouTube, Nadia Reinhardt gets to see the brand new secret uncensored episodes we're dropping this week, including The Drunken Dogman and Dogman vs Sheep Squatch. For more information about how you can help this channel stay online like the cool and sweet Nadia Reinhardt, here's our international TV spokesmongrel, Henry Lee Dogman. Hank?
Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page.
To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button. Or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that one. It cuts off after, I think, 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.